Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something timeless. Your greatest asset is your attention. Where it goes, your life flows. The world today is loud, fast, and full of opinions. Everybody's speaking, few are listening, and even fewer are working. So let's make it clear. Focus on yourself. Not in a selfish way, but in a purposeful way. There's a difference. You see, life doesn't reward the noisiest person in the room. It rewards the one who builds when no one's watching. When you focus on yourself, you begin to measure your progress by your own yardstick. You no longer waste your energy trying to be seen. You invest it into becoming something worth seeing. And here's the key: stay silent. Not because you're afraid to speak, but because you're busy becoming. Talk less, execute more. The world doesn't need your announcement. It needs your example. Every minute spent explaining your plan is a minute not spent executing it. Every moment spent proving yourself is a moment not spent improving yourself. When you're truly focused, you don't have time to argue. You don't need to defend your journey. You're working. You're refining. You're growing. In silence, you find your strength. In focus, you find your future. Remember, a tree makes no noise as it grows, but its fruit makes all the difference. Stay focused. Stay silent. Let your life speak volumes, certainly. Here is the first keynote: self-discipline is the foundation of all growth, expanded into a thoughtful, motivational, and educational speech of approximately 1,000 words in the same tone and style as previously requested. Self-discipline is not a trait you are born with. It is a decision you must make repeatedly until it becomes your way of life. It's the quiet engine behind all extraordinary success stories, and yet it rarely gets the credit. Why? Because self-discipline works in silence. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek validation. It simply gets to work. And over time, that work compounds into results that cannot be ignored. Let me tell you something that most people overlook: the bridge between your potential and your performance is built with self-discipline. You can have the greatest talents in the world, the most brilliant ideas, the biggest dreams, but without discipline, they remain unrealized. Because potential alone is nothing without action, and action without consistency collapses. And consistency, that's discipline's territory. Discipline is waking up when you said you would, not when you feel like it. It's doing the work even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. It's turning down short-term pleasure in favor of long-term gain. It's not dramatic, not flashy. It's steady, quiet, even boring sometimes. But it is precisely that consistency, that reliability, that separates the ones who talk from the ones who become. Growth doesn't come from motivation alone. Motivation is emotional, fleeting, and often dependent on external factors. You watch a video, hear a speech, feel inspired, and that's good. But inspiration is like a spark. If you don't catch it and use it to build a fire, it dies. Discipline is the firewood. It's what keeps the flame alive after the spark fades. Every time you follow through on your word, when you don't feel like it, you add another log to that fire. Over time, it becomes unstoppable. Now, let's talk about focus. You cannot focus without discipline. Your mind is a tool, not a master. If you don't train it to obey you, it will lead you anywhere the wind blows. Notifications, distractions, other people's opinions. But when you practice discipline, you train your mind to stay on course. You learn to say no, not just to others, but to yourself. You learn to delay gratification, to think long-term, to resist the temptation of the easy route. The world we live in makes self-discipline harder than ever. Everything is designed for convenience, for instant gratification, for comfort. The food is fast, the entertainment is endless, the feedback is immediate. And that's why true discipline is rare. But here's the good news: because it's rare, it's valuable. It's what sets you apart. In a world that rewards short bursts of effort, discipline allows you to build something lasting. You won't always feel motivated, but you can always choose discipline. And that choice builds your character. Think of a sculptor chipping away at a block of stone. Every disciplined decision is one strike of the hammer. It may seem small, it may seem repetitive, but keep striking and the form begins to emerge. Keep striking and purpose reveals itself. Keep striking and you become the masterpiece. Some people think discipline is restriction. They think it's about denying yourself. But that's a misunderstanding. Discipline is not punishment, it's empowerment. It gives you control. It frees you from being ruled by moods, impulses, and habits that don't serve you. It's not about living less, it's about living deliberately. When you're disciplined, you're not reacting to life, you're leading it. Let's be clear, self-discipline isn't easy. It requires effort, sacrifice, and sometimes discomfort. But the alternative, regret, stagnation, unrealized potential, is far more painful. You have to decide which pain you want to carry: the pain of discipline today or the pain of disappointment tomorrow. If you're just starting out, don't try to change everything at once. Start small. Build one disciplined habit at a time. Wake up on time, make your bed, finish the tasks you start, honor your commitments. These may seem minor, but they are the training ground for bigger challenges. Every small act of discipline sharpens your inner edge. Over time, your mind begins to trust you. And when your mind trusts you, your confidence grows. When your confidence grows, your capacity expands. And when your capacity expands, your impact multiplies. There will be days when you slip. That's normal. Discipline doesn't mean perfection. It means perseverance. When you fall, you get up, you realign, you recommit. That's discipline, the ability to start again, to keep going, to stay faithful to the process, even when progress feels invisible. Discipline also teaches humility. It reminds you that success isn't guaranteed, but earned inch by inch, decision by decision. It strips away entitlement and replaces it with responsibility. It shows you that you are the author of your results, not the victim of your circumstances. Eventually, discipline becomes identity. You no longer have to force yourself. You are the kind of person who follows through. You begin to take pride in doing the hard things. You begin to value your word to yourself more than the praise of others. That's when real transformation begins. Not when others believe in you, but when you believe in yourself, because your actions back up your intentions. And here's the beautiful irony. The more disciplined you become, the freer you feel. Because when you master yourself, you are no longer controlled by anything outside of you. You're no longer tossed by life, you steer it. That's the freedom most people dream of but never taste because they don't want to pay the price. Discipline is the price, and it's worth it. So don't wait for the perfect day to start. That day doesn't exist. The moment of decision is now. Train yourself to do what needs to be done, especially when it's inconvenient. That is where greatness lives. That is where growth begins. That is where your best life is built, not on the stage, not in the spotlight, but in the quiet places where discipline is. Focus on becoming that person, not once, every day, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Because in the end, self-discipline is not just the foundation of growth, it's the foundation of everything. Silence is one of the most misunderstood qualities in a person's growth journey. In a world where speaking out is often glorified and being loud is equated with being strong, silence is mistakenly seen as weakness, shyness, or indecision. But make no mistake, real silence, the kind chosen deliberately, is not passive, it is strategic, it is intelligent. It is a decision made by those who understand that progress does not always require noise. There's a kind of strength that comes from restraint. When you learn to hold back your words, especially when the world is pressing you to speak, you show mastery over yourself. You learn to listen, not just to others, but to your own thoughts. And in that listening, clarity is born. Because the truth is, when the noise dies down, you begin to hear what really matters. Your direction, your goals, your purpose. Being silent does not mean you are without power. It means you are reserving it. You are choosing not to spend your energy on unnecessary explanations, arguments, or opinions. You are not playing every card at once. You are observing, watching, learning. And while the world rushes to be seen, you're building something far more valuable: wisdom. Because wisdom is not loud. Wisdom is quiet, collected, and composed. You see, noise draws attention, but silence builds momentum. When you're silent, you're not idle, you're working behind the scenes. You're sharpening your skills. You're planning your next move. You're building something real and lasting while others are chasing applause. And the beautiful thing is, by the time you do speak, or by the time your actions speak for you, your silence will make sense. It will become obvious that you were never inactive, you were intentional. Think about how nature works. The seed doesn't scream when it's planted. It grows quietly beneath the surface. The roots go deep before the branches go high. No one sees the early stages, yet that's where the true strength is developed, in silence, in darkness, in solitude. And when the time is right, the results reveal themselves. Not through noise, but through undeniable presence. That's how your progress should be. Let your silence be the soil where your dreams take root. Don't waste time explaining to others what you're working on. Let your work speak when it's ready. People often ask, why are you so quiet? The answer is simple: because you're focused. You've learned that every word costs energy, and you've decided to invest that energy into growth, not gossip. The truth is, people who talk too much often haven't done enough. The louder someone is about their plans, the more uncertain they often are about their ability to follow through. It's a form of overcompensation. But when you know where you're going and what you're building, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to announce it. You stay low, you stay focused, and you stay quiet until the results make the noise for you. Silence is also protection. It guards your vision from criticism, envy, and interference. When your dreams are still fragile, still forming, they don't need exposure, they need shelter. Sharing too early or too widely invites opinions from people who may not understand your path. And if you're not grounded yet, those opinions can plant doubt. That's why staying silent is not hiding, it's preserving. Until your vision is strong enough to stand on its own. In relationships, silence is a powerful communicator. When you're calm in the face of conflict, when you don't react to every provocation, you show emotional intelligence. You show restraint. You show that you're driven by purpose, not ego. And that control over your emotions, that pause before response, is a mark of someone who doesn't need to win arguments. They're too busy winning in life. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak with purpose. When you do talk, your words carry weight because you haven't spent them carelessly. Your silence makes your voice stronger. People begin to listen more attentively when you speak less frequently but more intentionally. Silence also enhances learning. You cannot learn if you are always speaking. The person who speaks may repeat what they already know, but the person who listens gains something new. When you choose silence, you open the door to observation, understanding, and insight. You see what others miss. You hear the unsaid. You learn faster, deeper, and with more awareness. Some of the most powerful moves in life are made quietly. Decisions that change the trajectory of your future are not made on stages. They're made in silent rooms, early mornings, late nights, solitary hours filled with thinking, planning, reflecting. That silence is not empty. It is full of preparation. Don't mistake activity for progress. Just because someone is loud, present, and constantly talking doesn't mean they are growing. True growth is often invisible in the beginning. It happens internally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, long before it shows up externally. And if you are constantly broadcasting every step, you rob yourself of the depth that silence provides. Think of silence as a tool, a shield, a weapon, and a strategy. It's not that you have nothing to say. It's that you've learned the value of timing. You've understood that not everything needs to be said, and not everyone needs to hear your plan. Some things are best kept to yourself, not out of fear, but out of strength. Let your silence confuse those who don't understand it. Let it irritate those who seek constant attention. Let it create curiosity. But most importantly, let it create peace. Because when you stop trying to prove yourself to everyone, you gain something priceless: freedom. The freedom to grow, to fail, to succeed on your own terms, without the noise, without the pressure, without the need for approval. So choose silence not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Choose silence not because you're idle, but because you're intentional. Choose silence not to disappear, but to rise without distraction. Because the most powerful stories are not shouted, they are revealed, one silent breakthrough at a time. In life, people are not moved by what you say as much as they are by what you do. Words may impress for a moment, but actions echo far longer. You can stand in a room and make promises, declare intentions, outline your plans, and proclaim your ambitions, but none of that matters if your actions don't align. The truth is simple yet profound. The world observes actions, not announcements. It listens with its eyes, not its ears. We live in an age of constant declaration. Social media has made it easy for people to talk about their goals, show off their routines, and broadcast their progress. But there's a fine line between sharing for inspiration and performing for validation. When the desire to be seen outweighs the commitment to truly build, the result is shallow progress. You might impress people temporarily, but in the long run, the results always tell the real story. Anyone can make a noise. Few are willing to make the sacrifices that lead to true change. You see, results require a level of discipline, consistency, and humility that doesn't often fit into the highlight reel. The long hours of study, the lonely nights of practice, the quiet moments of failure and reflection, those are the foundations of real success, and most of that happens away from the spotlight. Announcements don't build legacies. Work does. If you want to stand out in this world, don't be louder. Be better. Let your habits be your message. Let your results be your introduction. The strongest people don't spend their time explaining who they are. They show you through their discipline, their attitude, and the consistency of their effort. And here's the truth: when you consistently deliver, people start paying attention without you having to say a word. Imagine someone who constantly tells you they're going to change their life, start a new habit, achieve a big dream. At first, you may be supportive, you may believe them. But if the pattern repeats itself without action, eventually those words lose their power. It's not because their dreams are impossible. It's because the absence of action becomes louder than the presence of words. People respect follow-through, not fantasy. On the other hand, think of the people you admire most. Chances are it's not because they told you what they were going to do. It's because they showed you. They didn't need applause. They didn't need attention. They just focused on doing the work. And because of that, their reputation grew naturally. Their impact expanded not because they demanded recognition, but because they deserved it. Real influence is built in silence and displayed in consistency. When you choose to act instead of announce, you separate yourself from the majority. You become the kind of person others look up to, not because of what you say, but because of how you move. Your character becomes visible. Your integrity speaks. Your results represent you better than any speech ever could. It's important to understand that talking about your goals isn't wrong. In fact, sometimes it's necessary to articulate your vision and speak things into existence. But what matters is what follows. The announcement is only the beginning, the execution is the journey, and the journey is what people ultimately remember. So if you're going to speak, let it be brief. Let it be clear. Then let your actions fill in the rest. You must become the kind of person who takes pride not in being heard, but in being effective. Be so deeply committed to your own standards that you don't need external validation to keep going. It takes a quiet kind of confidence to keep working when no one is watching and to let success do the speaking when the time is right. And don't be surprised if your silence makes people uncomfortable. In a world that thrives on noise, staying silent and letting your actions speak can feel intimidating to others. But that's not your concern. Your job is not to make people comfortable. Your job is to become the best version of yourself and let your excellence speak on your behalf. The people who achieve greatness don't spend their energy proving their worth to everyone. They know their worth is proven through mastery, consistency, and persistence. They are builders, not broadcasters. They build skills, they build discipline, they build value. And when that value becomes visible, the world takes notice. Not because it was told to, but because it can't help but notice. That's why it's far better to be underestimated than overhyped. Let others doubt you. Let them assume you're not serious, not capable, not ready. And then let your results break the silence. Let your progress become undeniable. Let your transformation be so evident that no words are needed to explain it. This is how real power works. It doesn't seek attention, it earns respect. There's a timeless wisdom in allowing your work to introduce you. Think of the craftsman who spends years perfecting his art before showing the world. Think of the athlete who trains day in and day out without needing to boast about every milestone. Think of the leader who leads by example rather than demand. These individuals understand something deeply, that the loudest voice in the room is not always the most powerful. Often, it's the most insecure. True power is quiet, steady, and built on action. So the next time you feel the urge to talk about your plans, pause. Ask yourself, have I earned the right to speak on this through my actions? Is this announcement serving my growth, or is it just a distraction from the work? And if the answer points you back to execution, then honor that. Get back to the task. Get back to the grind. Let the results handle the talking later. At the end of the day, your life is not a pitch, it's a demonstration. Don't worry about telling people who you are. Show them in your consistency, in your choices, in your resilience, in your results, because that's what the world truly pays attention to. Not what you say you will do, but what you consistently prove you can do. And when your actions become loud enough, you'll find you don't need to speak as much. The world will already be listening. Real growth is personal. It's intimate, uncomfortable, messy, and often invisible to the outside world. It doesn't demand attention or applause. In fact, the more serious you are about growing, the more you start to understand that it requires privacy, not publicity. Growth is not a show, it's a process, and processes thrive in silence. They thrive in spaces where you're free to fail, reflect, adjust, and try again without the pressure of being watched. When you begin working on yourself, whether it's mentally, emotionally, financially, or spiritually, it's tempting to share everything you're doing. You want people to know that you're changing. You want to prove that you're making progress. But if you're always performing your growth for others, you risk turning the process into a performance. You start doing things not because they matter to you, but because they look good to others. True development doesn't require validation. In fact, validation often distracts from the deeper work. The moment you start chasing likes, approval, or praise, you shift your focus from transformation to impression. And transformation suffers when you're too focused on the impression you're making. Privacy, on the other hand, offers you the freedom to be authentic, to stumble, to learn, and to evolve at your own pace. Think about the most profound changes that happen in nature. A caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly in front of an audience. It hides inside a cocoon. It dissolves into something unrecognizable before it reforms into something beautiful. No one sees that part. No one applauds the struggle. But that's where the miracle happens, in silence, in solitude, in complete privacy. That's how human growth works too. When you allow yourself the space to grow privately, you protect your energy. You shield your developing mindset from doubt, envy, and outside noise. Not everyone will understand your journey. Not everyone will support it. And if you expose your process too early, you invite interference that can shake your confidence before your foundation is even secure. Privacy gives you the space to build that foundation strong and steady. In private, you can experiment, you can test new ideas, adopt new habits, and make honest mistakes without fear of judgment. Growth is not linear, it requires trial and error. And that trial and error is best done away from the spotlight. Public attention can create pressure to be perfect, to have everything figured out, to avoid looking weak. But growth requires vulnerability. It requires you to be honest about where you are, not just where you want to be. That honesty flourishes in private. Moreover, private growth is more sustainable. When you grow for yourself, not for the audience, your motivation becomes internal. You no longer rely on compliments or attention to keep going. You build discipline, you build self-respect, you build resilience, and those qualities stay with you long after the spotlight fades. Publicity is temporary, but the person you become through quiet, focused work is permanent. Privacy also forces you to rely on your own judgment. You stop looking to others to tell you if you're doing it right. You learn to listen to your intuition. You learn to evaluate your own progress based on how you feel, how you think, and how you behave, not on what others say. That kind of self-trust is powerful. It gives you the freedom to make bold choices. It gives you the strength to keep going when no one is clapping. And it gives you the confidence to walk your own path even when it's unpopular. This doesn't mean you never share your journey. There is a time and place for that. Sharing can inspire others, attract the right support, and reinforce your own progress. But it should never come at the cost of authenticity. Share from a place of confidence, not insecurity. Share the lessons after they've been learned, not while you're still trying to understand them. And most importantly, never let the desire to be seen override the need to grow. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your development is to disappear for a while, not to escape, but to evolve, to log off, tune out the noise, and turn inward, to study, to practice, to heal, to build, to become. Not every season of your life needs to be broadcast. Some seasons are meant to be sacred. Some seasons are just for you. The world may not understand your silence. It may wonder where you went, what you're doing, why you're so distant. Let it wonder. Growth is not a performance. It's not something you owe an explanation for. Your responsibility is not to be constantly visible. It's to be genuinely evolving. And if that requires pulling away for a time, so be it. You're not falling behind. You're planting roots. And the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. You'll know when it's time to step back into the light. When your habits are solid, when your mind is clear, when your confidence comes from within, not from the opinions of others. That's when you can share your journey, not to impress, but to inspire. And people will listen, not because you told them to, but because your presence speaks for itself. Growth is a sacred process. It's not meant to be rushed, and it's certainly not meant to be performed. The next time you feel the urge to announce your goals or prove your progress, pause. Ask yourself, is this for me or for them? Am I growing or just seeking attention? If the answer leads you back to your own quiet work, then trust it. Turn down the volume of the world and turn up the volume of your discipline. Because in the end, the most powerful transformations don't happen on stages. They happen in rooms where no one is watching, in journals no one reads, in prayers no one hears, in moments of doubt, perseverance, and breakthrough that belong to you alone. That's where real growth lies. Not in publicity, but in privacy. And the more you honor that space, the more profound your evolution will be. One of the greatest misuses of your energy is trying to explain yourself to people who are not committed to understanding you. The more time you spend explaining your dreams, your decisions, your boundaries, your plans, or your journey, the less energy you have to actually build those very things. People will form opinions regardless of what you say. Some will misunderstand your intentions. Others will misjudge your silence. But your job is not to convince the world. It is to create something that speaks for itself. That kind of clarity doesn't come from conversation. It comes from construction. When you focus on building, you shift your mindset from seeking approval to producing results. It becomes less about being accepted and more about being effective. Your energy becomes sacred. You no longer spend it defending your path to people who have never walked it. You don't need to answer every doubt or justify every move. You just keep going. Because you understand that while words might feed egos, actions feed outcomes. There is a quiet power in choosing not to explain. It's not arrogance, it's wisdom. It means you've decided to value your time, your mental space, and your emotional energy. It means you understand that no amount of explaining can make someone see your vision if their mind isn't open or their perspective is limited. And even if they do understand, it doesn't change what you must do. Your responsibility is to the work, not the audience. We often feel the urge to explain because we fear judgment. We don't want people to think we're selfish, arrogant, or ungrateful. But here's the truth: you don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your growth, your peace, or your progress. The people who genuinely support you don't need explanations. And the people who constantly need explanations are usually the ones who don't have the capacity to understand where you're going. Every moment you spend explaining is a moment you could have spent learning, practicing, refining, or executing. And the irony is this: when you build well, you won't need to explain anything. Your results will do it for you. Success silences doubt, progress ends debates, and consistent growth leaves no room for question. What you build becomes undeniable, even to those who once misunderstood you. This doesn't mean you never communicate. Communication is important, but there's a difference between being clear and being defensive. Share your intentions with those who are part of your journey, who uplift your vision and who add value to your mission. But don't waste time trying to convert skeptics into believers. That's not your job. Your job is to build. Your job is to move forward. Your job is to stay focused on what matters. You must become selective with your energy. Protect it like a builder protects the foundation of a house. You wouldn't waste your time arguing about the blueprint while the bricks remain unlaid. Likewise, don't get caught up in explanations when there's work to be done. The people who end up making a lasting impact are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who built the most. Think of the greatest innovations, the most transformative projects, the most impactful movements. None of them became great through explanation alone. They became great through relentless action. The visionaries didn't pause their mission every time someone questioned it. They kept building, they kept improving, they let their creation speak, and that's exactly what you must do. Building also teaches you more than any conversation ever will. As you build, you learn about yourself. You discover your strengths, confront your weaknesses, and evolve through experience. You develop discipline, you cultivate patience. You become someone who trusts the process more than the praise, and that internal transformation becomes your real success, long before the world ever sees the external results. You'll also find that the more you build, the less you feel the need to explain, because the work starts to speak back to you. It begins to validate your efforts. The results, small at first, become your feedback. You gain confidence not from someone else's reassurance, but from the reality that you're moving forward, that you're becoming the person you envisioned, that you're turning thought into form. There will always be people who ask why you're so quiet, why you've changed, why you're not around as much. Some will think you're distant, selfish, or cold. But what they don't see is that you're building something they can't yet understand. Maybe it's a better version of yourself. Maybe it's a new skill, a new business, a healthier lifestyle, or a stronger mindset. Whatever it is, it deserves your full attention. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's focus. It's the sound of energy being redirected into purpose, into craft, into creation, into something that, when revealed, won't require an explanation at all. That's the beauty of staying in the work. Eventually, your results become louder than your words ever could. And here's the reward: when you build in silence and with intention, your life becomes your message. You attract people who respect your journey, not because you explained it, but because they recognize the substance in your results. You create impact not by broadcasting, but by becoming. And in doing so, you inspire others, not by telling them what you're building, but by showing them what's possible when you stop explaining and start executing. So guard your energy. Let your focus be fierce. When someone doesn't understand your path, smile and keep building. When you're tempted to justify your vision, pause and pour that energy into action. When you feel misunderstood, let your discipline speak louder than your discomfort. And when you finally arrive at a milestone, let your creation be the answer to every question they once asked. Because at the end of the day, your legacy won't be built on explanations. It will be built on what you created when no one was watching, when few believed in you, and when you chose to stay silent and focused anyway. Let your energy go where it counts, not into explaining, but into becoming, not into defending, but into delivering. That is how real builders rise. That is how greatness is made. Silence is one of the most powerful tools in your personal development journey. Not because it makes you invisible, but because it makes you invincible to the noise that destroys focus, clarity, and peace. In a world where everyone is talking, reacting, and involving themselves in things that don't matter, silence becomes your sanctuary. It becomes your filter, the space where you decide what deserves your attention and what doesn't. The truth is, most of the drama, conflict, and mental clutter we face daily is not because of what happens to us, but because of how we respond to it. And silence is your greatest response when the goal is growth. There is a kind of strength in silence that many people overlook. It's not the weakness of someone who doesn't know what to say. It's the discipline of someone who doesn't need to say anything. Silence keeps you from reacting to every insult, every opinion, every rumor, every piece of gossip, and every distraction. It trains you to pause, reflect, and respond only when it's necessary, and in a way that aligns with your purpose, not your emotions. When you remain silent in the face of nonsense, you protect your energy. You don't get pulled into meaningless debates. You don't waste time trying to prove a point to someone who's only interested in conflict, not understanding. Drama thrives on engagement. It needs attention to survive. The moment you step into a situation fueled by emotion and ego, you're feeding it. You're giving it life. But when you stay silent, when you choose peace over pride, you cut off its oxygen. You send a message not loudly but clearly, I have better things to do. And that message is powerful. It elevates you. It separates you from the average. Because while others are arguing and chasing validation, you're building. You're growing. You're working quietly on a life that doesn't need to be defended with words. Distraction, like drama, often comes disguised as urgency. It pulls at your attention, making you believe everything needs a response, a reaction, or a reply. But silence allows you to separate what's important from what's noise. It gives you the mental space to think critically, to ask, does this deserve my time? Does this align with my goals? Will this matter a year from now? Most of the time, the answer is no. But you can only hear that answer when you step back from the noise and sit in silence long enough to think clearly. Many people mistake silence for passivity. They think if you're not responding, you're weak. If you're not explaining, you're hiding something. But the wise understand that silence isn't absence. It's presence, sharpened and focused. It's the difference between reacting and mastering yourself, between being driven by impulse or led by purpose. In silence, you learn to observe. You notice who's genuine and who's not. You start to see patterns in behavior. You detect manipulation, envy, insecurity, things that are hard to spot when you're always talking, always probing, always explaining. When you choose silence, you also begin to understand how much you've been wasting energy on people who never listen, wasting emotion on battles that can't be won, wasting potential on situations that don't serve your future. Silence helps you reset. It pulls you back into alignment with your deeper values. It reminds you that not every action requires a reaction. Not every disrespect deserves your response. And not every invitation to chaos deserves your presence. Imagine what you could achieve if you stopped pouring your energy into people and situations that do not matter. Imagine what would happen if you took all that time spent arguing, probing, gossiping, or reacting and invested it into your craft, your health, your goals, your family, your future. That is the power of silence. It redirects energy, it preserves focus, it builds discipline. And in a noisy world, discipline becomes your competitive advantage. Silence also improves your relationships. When you're not constantly trying to win arguments or have the last word, you become a better listener. You begin to hear what others truly mean, not just what they say. You learn patience. You build emotional intelligence. And most importantly, you reduce conflict, because many arguments escalate not from real issues, but from emotional reactions. Silence interrupts that cycle. It gives everyone a moment to breathe, to rethink, to choose a better path forward. And let's be clear, silence doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean allowing disrespect or injustice. It means choosing your battles with wisdom. It means refusing to lower yourself to the level of foolishness just to be right. You don't need to respond to every critic to be powerful. You don't need to engage in every conflict to be strong. Sometimes the greatest display of strength is walking away with your peace intact. The world will always try to pull you into drama and distraction. Social media, news cycles, gossip, negativity, it's everywhere. But if you truly want to rise, if you want to evolve into your higher self, you must protect your mind like it's your most valuable asset. Because it is. And the mind thrives in silence. That's where ideas are born. That's where clarity lives. That's where you access the level of thinking that leads to true greatness. Not surface-level success, but meaningful, lasting transformation. Silence also trains your intuition. When the noise is gone, you can finally hear your own voice. The one that knows what's right for you. The one that guides you toward your purpose. The one that warns you when something isn't aligned. That inner voice is often drowned out by external noise. But in silence, it becomes loud and clear. And once you learn to trust that voice, your decisions become sharper, faster, and more confident. You don't have to announce every move. You don't have to respond to every insult. You don't have to explain every boundary. You just have to stay grounded, stay focused, stay silent where silence is the high road. Use your energy to create, not to confront. Use your discipline to rise, not to react. Because in the end, it's not the loudest person who wins, it's the one who stayed consistent while everyone else got distracted. And that person can be you. Silence isn't emptiness. It's strategy, it's strength, it's clarity. And when you master it, you become unshakable. Not because life gets easier, but because your mind becomes stronger, your emotions more stable, your vision more focused. So if your goal is growth, protect your silence. Let others chase noise, you chase peace. Let others engage in drama, you engage in building. Let others waste time reacting. You invest time creating. That is how real progress is made, not with noise, but with quiet, intentional action. When you begin focusing on yourself truly and intentionally, you enter a journey that goes far beyond external success. You start to build character, real character. The kind that's not seen in titles or trophies, but in how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Many people chase results. They want the money, the fame, the status. But what truly sustains those things, what makes them meaningful and lasting, is the person you become in the process. And that only happens when you decide to stop watching others, stop competing with others, and begin focusing on your own mind, your own habits, your own growth. You see, results can be temporary. They can be taken away. But character, that's yours forever. It's who you are at your core. It's the discipline you practice when it would be easier to quit. It's the patience you show when everything inside you wants to rush. It's the integrity you hold on to when shortcuts appear. And none of these qualities are built in noise. They are built in silence, in solitude, in the quiet moments where you hold yourself accountable, not because someone else is watching, but because you are. The world often teaches us to focus on outcomes. What do you have to show? What can you prove? But the inner world, the place where real transformation happens, asks a different question. Who are you becoming? And that question can only be answered through self-focus. When you stop looking sideways, when you stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10, when you stop seeking external validation and start valuing your own personal evolution, that's when the magic happens. That's when you start building substance, not just style. Focusing on yourself means taking full ownership of your life. No more blaming, no more excuses, no more waiting for someone else to change. You take responsibility for your thoughts, your words, your reactions, your results. You realize that the external world is often just a reflection of your internal condition. So if you want to change your life, you don't start with the world. You start with you. You build discipline in your mind. You clean up your habits. You organize your values. You set your own standards higher, not to impress others, but because you refuse to stay average when you know you're capable of more. And here's what happens as you do this: your confidence grows. Not because someone told you you're good enough, but because you begin proving it to yourself day after day. You keep the promises you make to yourself. You show up even when motivation fades. You get stronger in your mind. You bounce back faster from failure. You develop emotional maturity. And suddenly you're not shaken by every storm. You're not needing constant approval. You're not looking outside for what must be built inside. This journey of self-focus also teaches humility. As you get closer to your true self, you begin to realize how much there is to learn, how much growth is still ahead, and that humility keeps you grounded. It protects you from arrogance. It reminds you that every person you meet has a story, every success comes with sacrifice, and every breakthrough was once just a battle. You stop judging others. You stop criticizing people's journeys. You start appreciating the complexity of growth, yours and theirs. Another powerful truth: self-focus reveals your true strengths. You begin to see what makes you different, what makes you valuable. Not from a place of ego, but from clarity. When you're always focused on others, you copy, you compare, you conform. But when you tune into your own mind and heart, you discover original ideas, fresh insights, new passions. You become a creator, not just a consumer. And that shift from imitation to authenticity is where real power lies. Building character through self-focus also requires you to face your flaws. It's not just about celebrating your strengths. It's about confronting the habits and beliefs that hold you back. And that's not always easy. It's uncomfortable to admit that you procrastinate, or that you blame others, or that you avoid hard conversations. But that discomfort is necessary. It's the signal that growth is happening, that you're evolving beyond your past patterns, that you're becoming more honest, more courageous, more resilient. In this process, you'll also learn the importance of consistency. Great character is not built in a day, it's built daily. In the way you wake up early when you'd rather sleep in the way you keep studying when no one is grading you, in the way you train your body, feed your mind, protect your peace. These small, repeated acts of discipline form the foundation of your identity, and over time they become second nature. You don't need to try to be strong, you are strong because you've trained for it. As your character deepens, your impact expands. People begin to trust you more, not because you said the right words, but because your actions speak with integrity. You become a person of value, not just a person of noise. You start attracting the right people, the right opportunities, the right energy. Why? Because you've aligned your external world with your internal values. And that kind of alignment is rare and magnetic. And here's something else that's beautiful: when you focus on yourself and grow your character, you become more generous. You give without expecting. You help without needing credit. You encourage others because you no longer see them as competition. You begin to lift others as you rise, not because you have to, but because your character won't let you do anything less. That's leadership. That's impact. And it all starts with the decision to turn inward, to grow yourself before you try to influence the world. So if you're on this journey, stay with it. Keep choosing self-focus. Keep choosing quiet growth over loud noise. Keep choosing inner strength over external praise. You might not see the results right away. Others might not notice. But over time, your life will become the proof. Your presence will carry weight. Your words will have meaning. And your actions will inspire. Not because you sought attention, but because you built a character that can't be ignored. Progress is often celebrated with noise. Announcements, celebrations, social media updates, and loud proclamations of success. We live in a world where instant gratification and public recognition seem to be the currency of achievement. Yet the most meaningful progress, the kind that lasts, often happens quietly. It is the slow, steady, unseen work that builds a foundation so strong it can withstand any storm. Quiet progress is sustainable progress because it is rooted in discipline, consistency, and a deep connection to your true purpose, rather than external validation. When you focus on yourself and choose to stay silent about your journey, you allow your efforts to compound without interruption or interference. Just like money grows with interest over time, the skills, habits, and mindsets you develop silently multiply and prepare you for breakthroughs. Noise attracts distraction and sometimes even sabotage from others who might envy your growth or from your own doubts stirred by seeking constant approval. Silence shields you from these dangers, letting you cultivate progress without the pressure of an audience. Quiet progress is also about patience. In a culture obsessed with speed, waiting is often seen as a weakness. But patience is a form of wisdom. It recognizes that some things take time and that trying to rush growth only creates cracks in the foundation. When you stay silent and focus deeply on your path, you develop patience as a byproduct. You learn to trust the process, to show up every day even when results are not immediately visible. This consistency is what creates momentum. The small, almost invisible actions, reading a book, practicing a skill, reflecting on your experiences, are the building blocks of giant leaps forward. There is a subtle power in making progress quietly because it keeps your motivation intrinsic. When you don't rely on external applause, you tap into a deeper source of energy, the satisfaction that comes from knowing you are becoming better, regardless of recognition. This intrinsic motivation fuels long-term commitment. It helps you overcome setbacks without losing heart. When you know your progress is for you, not for show, you keep moving forward even when the world is silent. Many people confuse progress with popularity. They think if no one notices their efforts, then they are not really moving forward. But history shows us that some of the greatest successes were born from quiet labor. Inventors, artists, leaders, and athletes often spend years working in solitude before their breakthroughs become public. Those quiet years are not wasted. They are essential. They allow you to refine your craft, to learn from mistakes without pressure, and to build resilience. When you announce every small win, you risk becoming dependent on external validation, which is fickle and unreliable. Moreover, quiet progress keeps your mind clear and your heart focused. When you avoid the trap of constantly explaining yourself or proving your worth, you save mental energy. That energy goes back into your work. It allows you to concentrate deeply, to enter what psychologists call flow, a state of heightened creativity and productivity. The distractions of noise, whether from social media, gossip, or criticism, pull you out of flow and scatter your attention. Silence restores it. It lets you get lost in your purpose and find joy in the process itself. When progress is made quietly, it also reduces pressure. Public announcements create expectations from others and from yourself. These expectations can become burdensome, causing anxiety and fear of failure. But when your progress is private, you set your own pace and standards. You measure success by your own growth, not by comparisons or external metrics. This freedom encourages experimentation and learning. You're more willing to take risks, try new things, and embrace failure as feedback rather than a defeat. Another reason quiet progress is sustainable is because it encourages humility. When you're not constantly broadcasting your achievements, you stay connected to your purpose rather than your ego. Humility keeps you open to learning, feedback, and growth. It prevents arrogance, which can blind you to weaknesses and lead to complacency. Staying silent about your progress doesn't mean you hide it forever, but that you choose wisely when and how to share your story, usually after you've built a solid foundation, not before. Quiet progress also fosters deeper relationships. When you're not performing for an audience, you engage with people more authentically. You listen more, judge less, and connect on a meaningful level. People sense genuine growth and are drawn to your integrity. These strong relationships become a support system for your continued progress. They provide encouragement, honest feedback, and sometimes new opportunities, all of which are critical for long-term success. Importantly, quiet progress keeps you aligned with your vision. When you don't get caught up in the noise of public opinion or the pressure to perform, you can focus on what really matters to you. You set goals that reflect your values and dreams, not the expectations of others. This alignment fuels passion and purpose. It turns work into joy and challenges into stepping stones. And when progress is aligned with purpose, it's naturally sustainable. In essence, quiet progress is a form of self-respect. It says you value your journey enough to protect it from distractions. It says you trust yourself to keep going without needing constant validation. It says you understand that the deepest transformations happen beneath the surface, away from the spotlight. And when you finally do share your achievements, they carry more weight because they are the result of authentic, sustained effort. If you want to cultivate quiet progress, start by setting boundaries. Limit the time you spend seeking approval or sharing updates. Prioritize deep work over busy work. Celebrate small wins privately. Keep a journal of your progress so you can track growth without needing others to notice. Surround yourself with people who respect your process and encourage your discipline. And most importantly, remind yourself regularly why you started. When your progress is rooted in purpose and protected by silence, it becomes unstoppable. Quiet progress is not about hiding or being secretive. It's about choosing your energy wisely and building a foundation so solid that when you finally reveal it, it cannot be shaken. It's about understanding that real success is a marathon, not a sprint. And the most sustainable way to run that marathon is with steady, silent steps forward, each one bringing you closer to the person you are destined to become.